The spring day is a stark contrast to the strange scene laid out before you. It feels as though the sky should be gray and stormy, not bright blue with soft, wispy clouds floating overhead. Reports had gotten back to the search party earlier of emaciated and dead livestock scattered across the homestead. Now standing here and listening to the mournful lowing of starving cattle nearby adds another layer of uneasiness to the murmuring of the searchers. Homesteads and properties all over and around the town of Cherryvale, Kansas, had been searched top to bottom for a man who had been missing for weeks now, all at the behest of the man's very determined brothers. Now the search led you here, to a homestead that looked completely abandoned by the 4 family members who had been its former inhabitants. You feel your stomach drop. Over the last year, more and more people have started going missing around your small town. Sure, it was sadly not an uncommon occurrence for folks to go missing on their ventures further west, but still, so many around your home alone that surely boded ill. Was the poor family that lived here just the next in this terrible string of disappearances? "Nothing to be found out here but a bunch of hungry animals," shouts a man ahead of you. "Let's check inside." Cautiously, you approach the home with the other men and step across the threshold. The one-room cabin looks much the same as any other you've seen, except for a stained white curtain that runs across what you assume to be the middle of the room. A few men step around that curtain as you're looking around, and a moment later you hear a deep voice say, "Look, here on the floor, there's a door," followed by the squeak of rusty hinges. Suddenly, the sound of spluttering and retching erupts from behind the curtain. The same voice chokes out, "Oh, dear God, what is that?" You move to step forward, curious despite yourself, when a wall of stench hits your nostrils. You can't help it. You start gagging too. The scent is truly horrendous, like fetid meat left in the sun. Trying to rein in your own gagging, you step forward around the curtain to try and get a look at what has been discovered. The smell only gets worse as you step towards the 3 men knelt around an open trapdoor in the floor, hands and handkerchiefs over their noses in an attempt to block the awful stench. Your eyes water as you peer over one of the men's shoulders into what looks to be a rough cellar. It's hard to see, the darkness below vying with your tearing eyes to block your vision. But as your eyes begin to adjust, the sight that greets you causes your heart to launch into your throat. A dark, rusty red stain spread evilly over the earthen floor. The cellar is covered in pools of dry blood. I'm Christiana.
And I'm Bree.
Settle in, but not in front of curtains.
Because you're about to hear something strange.
Welcome to episode 36, The Bloody Benders. Just want to give some trigger warnings at the very beginning of this episode. We're going to be talking about families moving west in the classic Old West period, so 1860s through the 80s. And there were some pretty terrible things that could happen to people along the trail, so just give a heads up there. Also wanted to give a heads up that we are going to be talking about a family of serial killers today that murdered their victims in pretty brutal ways. So if this is not about you, please don't listen to this episode. Please go to choose a different one to listen to. Take care of yourselves. We love you. Thanks so much. Enjoy the episode if you listen. So, that being said, Bree, what do you know about the Bloody Benders?
All I know is that I've heard of them before and that I knew they were a family of serial killers. Side note, one of the few things that makes me squeamish is vomit.
Oh.
So I'm sure in the video you could see me like cringing every single time.
Yeah.
Like I literally watched a colic surgery on a horse the one time.
Ooh,
that was
yeah.
fine. But people throw up. Animals is fine.
Oh.
People throw up is that and dirty dishwater are the two things that will make me vomit.
Yeah, no, I don't do dirty dishwater.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
It's those two things. And I'm like, you described it so well that I was like, ugh.
Yeah. Well, not that in there, but lots of ichor, shall we say. So I'm going to launch into who the Bender family was. Not known as much about... Wow.
Not much is known?
Not much is known about the heritage of the Bender family, but it is thought that they were of German descent. The family consisted of John, or Pa Bender, and his wife Kate, aka Ma, and their 2 children, aptly named John and Kate Jr.
Man, we have such original names here.
Oh, yes. As I said above, it's possible that they were of German descent, but not for certain. That's per Wikipedia. Pa, or John Sr., was around 60 and didn't speak English particularly well. According to Wiki, the words he would say in English were, quote, guttural and usually unintelligible.
Do we think they spoke German?
They spoke... Everything that I read said they definitely spoke German.
Well, because have you heard, like... That was really rude. Have you heard German? Because German is a more guttural language.
Yes, it's definitely it's throaty.
Yeah, so I could imagine if you were, I don't know, I'm not a native German speaker. If there's German speakers that listen to us, thank you.
Yes, that's awesome.
Danke?
Danke.
Danke.
Dankeschön.
I don't speak German, obviously, but it is a more guttural language. So I wonder if someone was speaking English, but with a very strong German accent.
It would sound, definitely, yeah. I am curious if this was by choice, though, or if it was potentially some kind of...
Speech impediment?
Speech impediment, yeah. Ma, or Kate Sr. Bender, was 55 years old and, like her husband, didn't speak much English. She was also known as Elvira. And, yes.
How did you get Kate out of Elvira?
Put a pin in that. And she was also apparently a nasty piece of work, shall we say. Per Wiki, she was, and this is a direct quote, so unfriendly that her neighbors called her a she-devil. So, sounds like by a lot of accounts, she was pretty nasty.
She was making friends everywhere she went.
She was making something. The children were a bit of a different story. John Jr. was about 25 years old. Kate was about 23 years old. Unlike their parents, both children spoke English very, very well. They also both attended Sunday school. And there were some differences between the two. Younger John was allegedly known as, and again, this is a quote from Wiki. I don't like this, but it's the language of the time, a quote unquote half-wit due to his tendency to just randomly start laughing. And Kate, on the other hand, claimed to be both a psychic and a healer.
This family.
They're an interesting family.
There's some variety there.
They sure did.
Where does this take place?
This is in Kansas.
Oh, you
Sorry.
said that intro. Where in Kansas is this?
Close to the town. So the town was not actually built, and we'll get into this a little bit closer, but the town was built after they arrived, and it was Cherryvale.
Do you know where? Is it eastern, western, middle?
I'm not entirely sure on that one. I actually should have looked that up, and I didn't.
Fun fact. Before I went to Kansas, I apparently didn't actually know where Kansas was because I was very surprised that we were in the middle of the freaking country.
Yeah. Yeah. You were in the flat.
I apparently wasn't prepared for that trip.
Yeah. I've not been to Kansas, so I don't know how it compares, but I actually everyone says how flat it is, and you don't realize until you're out there.
It's so flat.
Yeah. But in Illinois, at least, it was still really pretty. It was very pretty in a different way than mountains are pretty, but...
When Judy, here's our shout out for Judy.
Hey, Judy.
And I were driving that, we were unsettled by that. Mm-hmm. But then when we got back into eastern Ohio and West Virginia, we were we were both we feel so much more relaxed now because we were we made it out of Ohio. That was part of why we felt relaxed.
Yeah.
But the other reason was that there were mountains again. We were oh my God, mountains! This is like being at home.
Right. It's truly. It's true. If you've not been, I guess if you are born and raised in an area that it's completely flat, you're used to it. But if you're from an area that is very mountainous and you're not used to that, it is whoa, they're not kidding when they say it is flat.
It is. You can just keep seeing and seeing and but yeah, we were we both feel more relaxed now, and it's pouring at 9 o'clock at night, and we're why are we more relaxed? Because there's mountains.
This feels more familiar. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So Kate, like I said, she claimed to be a psychic and healer, and she would distribute flyers to advertise her various abilities. She held seances and even lectures about spiritualism, because we get into this a little bit later, but this family came to Kansas with a group of families that were spiritualists. Now, all this is fine and good about the Bender family, but the question is, were they actually a family? Surprise.
Interesting.
So there is evidence to suggest that John and Kate Jr. were not actually the children of Ma and Pa Bender at all. Ma Bender was born as Almira Hill Mark, so that's probably where Elvira came from.
Where do you get Kate out of that?
That I still don't know. And I wonder if they I don't know if this was done as much in this time period, if they
changed their names.
Yeah, if they more Americanized their names a little bit. Ma apparently or allegedly married one Simon Mark, and together the couple had 12 children.
Holy cow.
Lots of kids.
You know what?
As you did.
Maybe that's why she was so grumpy.
Fair.
I bet physically.
She was exhausted.
Physically, just your body after having 12 kids. Your body probably doesn't do things the way it used to, and it probably hurts, and I'd be grumpy too.
Absolutely. She was said to have had several husbands before meeting John Bender. Rumors flew that she had actually murdered her husbands, and or that some of them had died of head wounds, but these were never proven to be true.
They accidentally tripped into an axe.
Yes. This does become important later. So,
the axes?
Not the axes, but the head wounds. Kate Jr. was actually purported to be Ma's fifth daughter. So I believe those two at least were related.
Okay.
And when the Benders settled in Kansas, also I presume that she and John Sr. were married.
Okay.
When the Benders settled in Kansas, some neighbors stated that the two adult children of the Benders were not siblings at all, but husband and wife.
It's like Twilight.
It's a whole weird thing.
Isn't it? You haven't seen Twilight, right?
No, I have not.
You realize all of the Colin.
I did know them. I did know them. I did see it. Oh God, back in
ye olden days.
2008 maybe? Was that when we took a marching band trip to when I was a freshman. So it would have been 2029 actually. 2029? 2009. Holy hell. Where am I? Guys, it's been a long day. But we took it, and I remember they played it on the bus because we had one of the fancy buses that had...
We should watch Twilight.
We should. I want to again because I know it's bad.
But
oh, sorry. If anyone likes Twilight, I don't mean that to be an insult.
I enjoy watching it now because it is hilarious.
Yes.
I was way into that as a teenager. But anyways, the Cullens, right? So that's the family and the vampire family. If you haven't watched Twilight and want to, stop listening now.
Spoilers.
But it's the parent ones, right?
Yeah.
Are Carlisle and Esme.
Yeah.
And then they adopted all these other kids, but they're all together except for Edward. He's by himself.
Yeah. They all
he's emo.
Yes. He's something. Sorry, Robert Pattinson. We know you didn't want to be in that.
No one hates Twilight as much as the actors that were in Twilight.
So Morbid, everyone take a drink of water, did an episode about a bonus episode about Twilight where they just talked about it, and it was hilarious. What they think, the things they were saying about that movie.
I said no one hates that movie as much as Robert Pattinson.
No. He despised that movie. So
we need to watch it.
We do. Back to the Benders, I do want to say here, for transparency's sake, I don't know how true any of their supposed family history actually is. What does seem to be the most clear about their history is that the family, or quote unquote family, had an incredibly murky past. They spoke German, but there is question of whether they were actually of German descent or not, where they came from. It's extremely murky. There was no information on any of the other supposed 12 children that Kate had or Elvira had. So I don't want anyone to read into that as gospel or to, I felt like I needed to include that because there is reference to it.
You did say allegedly multiple times.
Yes. So transparency's sake, we do our best with the history we can find.
True that.
So I want to talk about the Bender homestead now. As I said, I kind of alluded to this earlier, the family ended up in Kansas after moving there with 4 other spiritualist families. They gained the property in Kansas through the Homestead Act. So this is early 1800s, or well, mid 1800s, I should say. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Homestead Act. I promise I won't go too crazy. This act was passed on May 20th of 1862, and it was passed in an attempt to hasten the settlement of the American West. The act allowed citizens 160 acres of government surveyed land with only a few requirements needed on behalf of the person receiving that land.
Is that why they went out? Is that why they went out west on Little House on the Prairie?
I don't know. I haven't actually read. I know of Little House on the Prairie. I haven't really watched the show or read the books.
I read the books mad long ago.
Yeah, I don't know if they were just going west, because there were a lot of families that went west just because they decided, like, for example, after the Civil War, they were like, okay, we lived, our home is completely war torn. We want to just pick up, move somewhere else, and start anew. This was pre-Civil War. I'm not sure when Little House on the Prairie was.
They liked the game Oregon Trail just a little bit too much.
Yeah, they did. And they all died of dysentery. They tried to float a wagon and they drowned.
Everyone drowned. They lost all their oxen and cattle.
Yep, all the oxen
Mississippi.
died on the Mississippi. Yep. It was a rough go of it. And
it was.
This is why I have to throw this in here. So I've said before, I do a lot of World War II, but I also do American Wild West. And when people come to me and they try to tell me, oh God, this was just such a simpler time, I'm like, y'all are wild. It was not simpler. You would die of the common cold. Like, racism was rampant. Even after the Civil War, racism was horrific. Like, what they did to people. Moving west, you literally, like, it's not a joke. Like, people kind of, I think sometimes hear, like, oh, you died on the Oregon Trail. That was not a joke. You died brutally on the Oregon Trail. So it could be wonderful if you made it. But that was a big if, and it was extremely dangerous, and it was difficult. There's my TED Talk. I'm so sorry. So the requirements needed for homesteaders to acquire this land for the Homestead Act was that they had to be citizens of the United States, or at the very least intended citizens. So if you were an immigrant, you could potentially take part. You'd be 21 years old or the head of a family and have never borne arms against the U.S. government. I don't take this as gospel because I don't know this for certain, but this makes me wonder if former Confederate soldiers were able to take part in this once the Civil War was over, because technically they would have taken up arms against the United States government because that was the Confederate government. They had to live on and improve upon the land for a period of 5 years. So essentially cultivate the land, farm the land. If the people that took the homestead or the pack of land, so after living on the homestead for 5 years, the person who filed the claim for that land could then keep it for nothing except for a small registration fee. So it was still a lot of work, but you could get the land for relatively cheap. And there's more involved to the act than that, but that's like the bare bones, and I'm not going to go crazy talking about it. Everyone goes, thank God. The land was originally claimed by the two John Benders.
Oh,
so,
I was like the kid. Okay. The son.
Yes. The two gentlemen came out first to get the land, and their parcel of land was located by the Great Osage Trail. And eventually, the town of Cherryvale would grow up several miles away. And this trail was, at the time, the only open road available for those wanting to travel any further west. So it was a pretty major, like, byway.
Oh, we saw things called Osage oranges, and we didn't know what they were. We were in Kansas at the International Forest of Friendship.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a nice picture of Judy holding up an Osage orange because they're big.
Are they really?
Yeah, I can show you.
Yeah.
We might have to post that on the socials.
Yeah.
I posted them when we were actually in Kansas, but
oh my gosh, yeah, they're
as big as her face.
Yeah.
I might see if she minds if I post that again when we get to this episode.
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I just realized I didn't really give a solid timeline for this. So I forget when the Benders, like when John and John claimed the parcel of land, but the family was, we'll say, quote unquote, active for the years of 1872 to 1873.
Active in murdering, you mean?
Correct. Okay. Yes. Just to give it, sorry, I just realized I think I rearranged my script a little bit, and I was like, I'm not giving dates at all. People are probably very confused. So pardon me.
It's like, whose line is it anyways?
Yes, truly.
The dates don't matter.
Everything's made up and the dates don't matter.
This
is not made up.
In the year of our Lord, 3042.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, the two John Benders originally claimed the land next to the Osage Trail. The two Johns were later joined by the two Kates, or Elvira and Kate Jr., after the cabin, after they had built a cabin and a barn. So they were kind of starting a life out there. And the Benders divided their cabin into two separate spaces by means of a heavy curtain. A smaller room at the back of the cabin was essentially where the family lived. And the front room contained the kitchen, a table, and chairs, like a dining room table and chairs. And it was in this section they also operated a tiny little general store. I'm very curious what this looked like, because these houses were not big. Like, when they say one room, they mean one room.
I was like, how much space?
Not much. I mean, the cabin that Chris and I stay in when we reenact at the Old Bedford Village. Mm-hmm. Now, that was a cabin built in the 1700s, so that was still pretty small. So they operated a tiny little general store out of the front of their house, and they also opened their home as a kind of inn, or like a rest stop, I guess you could almost say, for travelers, where the travelers on the Osage Trail could get a little bit of rest, and they could get a meal. You know, the Benders would cook them a meal.
You know, if I was a traveler at this time, I'd be very suspicious of inns, because it seems like every serial killer operated out of an inn.
Yeah.
Well, like, I know it's connected because you brought it up in the Hawk Mountain episode.
Yes. Yeah. That I should have said that at the beginning of this episode, but that was what inspired. I had something completely different planned for March, and then that reminded me so much of the Benders that I was like, I'm going to do this. So in March of 1873, one Dr. William York went missing near the town of Cherryvale. Keep in mind, there were unfortunately plenty of reasons a man could, or a woman, or anyone could go missing in the American West. Illness, accidents, conflicts with indigenous peoples, run-ins with outlaws. That is just to name a few. And side note, have you ever heard or seen the movie A Million Ways to Die in the West?
I'm pretty sure I watched it. I don't remember what happens, but I'm pretty sure I watched it.
I watched it with Chris, and I thought it was hilarious. Well, The Million Ways to Die in the West is not actually too far from the truth. Like, it is. I mean, that's hyperbole, but it is also like, there were a lot of ways. I kind of went into that a little bit earlier.
Do you know, not related, but it makes me think of the Train song, like 50 Ways to Say Goodbye.
Yes.
Like, she was drowned in a hot tub, danced to death in an East Side night.
That was literally life on the Osage Trail.
Got ran over by a crappy purple Scion. There's just so many lines on that.
Yes. And it could also take a long time to even realize that someone had gone missing if they did go missing. That being said, sometimes the poor souls who were lost along the trail were never recovered or ever even really looked for, because people would disappear, and there was just like, by the time you found out they disappeared, it's like, where are we even supposed to start looking for them?
It'd be way too late, and I'd imagine, like, depending on how long they were gone, there might not be a whole lot left.
Yeah, depending. For Dr. York, however, it was not the case that he was not looked for. Dr. York had two brothers, Edward York, who was a colonel, and Alexander York, who was a Kansas senator. So pretty influential gentlemen. And these two men were not willing to just accept the fact that their brother had died in the West. They were determined to find out exactly what happened. So Alexander and Edward's search led them to Cherryvale, as this had been the last place the good doctor had been reported to be seen. The brothers discovered that Dr. York had not been the first person to go missing in Labette County, where Cherryvale was located. And in fact, a string of disappearances came to light. One particular disappearance was that of George Lochner and his daughter. Trigger warning, this is really sad. His daughter was an infant. She was a baby. They had been traveling to Iowa when they both went missing. And allegedly, this is what truly started to ring some alarm bells in the county. Edward began an investigation in the county, which eventually led him to the Bender's residence. The family did actually tell Edward that while he had not stayed long, Dr. York had indeed visited them. And during the time of Edward's investigation, a town meeting was held where the locals decided that every single home would be searched for the missing physician. Because at this point, the whole town was starting to get worried. Like, you know, it was not, like I said, not necessarily uncommon for people to go missing, but there was a fair amount of people that had gone around this town, and people were starting to like raise an eyebrow at it.
It was like a higher frequency per capita.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Locals, like I said, they realized 11 people had gone missing near their town over the last year. So that was concerning to them. And would you like to take a guess at who also happened to be in attendance at this meeting?
One of the many Benders.
Oh, yes.
All of the Benders.
John Jr. and Sr. were both in attendance.
John and John sounds like a law firm.
It does. However, due to bad weather, the townwide search, had to be put off for a few days. So, and the timeline is a little murky here because I don't think it was months that they waited. I do think it was days. So I think this investigation started when Dr. York went missing in, what did I say? It was March, and then kind of continued on through the spring to May.
So, like, I don't know what the weather is. Like, I know it was warmer there when we were in Kansas, but I imagine they probably got some pretty intense winters.
Yeah, those were my thoughts too.
I don't know them. If you live in Kansas, let us know.
Yeah, or I guess, it was springtime, so even like storms could have been really, really bad.
But March is a pretty, what's the word I want? Wild card month.
Yeah, so it could have been snow, could have been storms, could have been a lot of different things that affected that. And then April, too, because like I said, I think this was a couple-month search. In May, the townsfolk were able to kind of begin their search proper. They noticed that livestock was running around the Bender property and looking starved. On closer investigation, they found that some of the stock was actually dead, and the homestead appeared completely abandoned.
Oh.
So at first, it was thought that the entire Bender family may have become the next victims in this string of disappearances.
I mean, they're probably connected to them.
Mm-hmm. A closer look at the farm told a different story. The family wagon was gone, and some of the food and clothing had been taken. However, everything else had been completely left behind. While searching the home, the locals found something interesting, a trapdoor in the floor, and this was behind that curtain that divided the house in two.
I feel like trapdoors are never anything good in horror movies, and this is very horror movie-esque.
Yeah.
Never open the trapdoor.
Well, they did. What they found underneath was not so much interesting as it was horrific. And trigger warning here, friends, when the trapdoor swung open, they were hit with this absolutely horrible smell of rot. Yeah. And on further investigation, the searchers found a cellar that was covered in dry blood.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. After finding all that blood, the searchers completely moved the cabin off its foundation so they could conduct a more thorough search. Mm-hmm. And no victims were found in the cellar, but the searchers were not to be deterred, and they turned their sights to a different area of the farm, the garden, which, according to neighbors, always looked freshly plowed. And it was there that they discovered the bodies of between 8 and 11 people underneath the freshly turned earth. Trigger warning again. Of these victims, the first to be discovered was Dr. William York, and his brother Edward had to identify his remains. George Lochner and his child were also both found, and they were buried together in the same grave. And other victims were found and identified. At least one person was unable to be recognized.
At the end, reminds me of something like current in the news.
Oh, okay.
but at the end, remind me.
At the end. I'm going to say another trigger warning here because I'm going to go into some discussions of the injuries. So heads up. Some of the bodies, including that of Dr. York, showed evidence of severe head wounds as though the skull had been bashed in, as well as slit throats. And I do want to read a list of the names of the victims here. This is according to an article I reference from the Weekly Kansas Chief. And I'm going to actually talk more about this article later, but I do think it's important to honor these people's memories. There might have been more people found than this, but this was what was written in this article specifically. And this article was published in 1873.
I was like, that made a little more sense. Okay.
Dr. William York, George Lochner, and his daughter, who her name might have been Mary Ann, according to Wiki. L.G. Brown, W.F. Marotti. It was M' Roddy, so that might have been Mick Roddy. Henry F. Mackenzie, again, I believe either Mackenzie or McKenzie. Peter Boyle, and then the unfortunately unidentified victims. As this discovery was unfolding, the tales of other townsfolk's experiences with the Benders started to seem to be carrying a little more weight. Neighbors of the Benders noted that they had moments of behaving violently. Edward York himself noted that Ma Bender actually got very angry at him during his investigation into the brothers' disappearance. Apparently, there were reports of a woman who had been threatened both with knives and firearms at the Bender residence. And when Edward questioned Ma Bender about this, she grew extremely defensive and stated the woman in question was, quote, a bad and wicked woman who she would kill if she ever came near them again. So she got aggressive.
It's a little intense.
A couple men also came forward with tales of entering the Bender house and nearly dying because of it. These survivors, before fleeing the home, described being, quote, forced to sit at a table with their backs against a stained canvas curtain. That is a quote from the Kansas Historical Society. A couple men also came forward with stories of refusing to sit in the chair in front of the curtain and then growing uncomfortable to the point of leaving the residence when the Benders would become angry and offensive because of this refusal. So what was the MO here?
They just liked murdering.
Pretty much. Well,
okay.
Investigations into the Benders, of course, continued, and eventually a pattern started to form. Once again, trigger warning, because we're going to just talk about the murder method here. People who entered the Bender residence would be sat at the kitchen table directly in front of the curtain that separated the dry goods/in section of the home and the living quarters. The trapdoor the searchers found was right behind this curtain, and while the intended victim was distracted, either potentially by Kate Jr., who could be talking about her spiritualism, kind of using that as a way to enthrall her audience, if you will, or even just simply eating a meal, they would be struck in the head with a hammer through that curtain, because I guess they could see the silhouette of the person and they were able to just whack. After being rendered helpless via the hammer blow, the person would be pulled down through the trapdoor into the cellar, and at that point, a different family member would finish dispatching the person by slitting their throat, which in some cases I'm sure was probably, at that point the person might have already died. The motive. It was thought to be greed. After murdering their victims, the Benders would strip any valuables from the victim's person before burying them, or burying the person, not the valuables. The newspaper, the Weekly Kansas Chief, in an article dated May 22nd, 1873, referred to the Bender home as the Devil's Kitchen. And later in the article, it referred to the property as where the victims were buried as Hell's Half Acre. This is where I wanted to talk a little more about this article. I did put it in my references. Go check this out if you're interested in history or even just interested in this story. I found it on the Library of Congress website and it's an image format, so it's a little bit difficult to read because you have to zoom in on the image. But it's really, really interesting, and it'll really give you an idea of how this crime was reported on in the time when it was committed. Crimes, multiple. And it's some of the ways they wrote were just crazy back then, how they described things. And it was really, really
I
interesting.
bet that's cool though, because like you said, they did use words differently, and it'd be interesting like just to see what the reports looked like at that time.
Yeah, I definitely encourage everyone to go check it out because it's just cool. So what happened to the Benders? After finding the victims buried in the Bender garden, a search was put on to hunt down this murderous family. The Benders were reported to have bought tickets in Thayer, Kansas. I believe this was probably train tickets. But after that, the trail ran cold. According to the article that I was talking about earlier, the Benders apparently left their wagon, the attached team of horses, and their dog in the middle of the street, of just a public street. The cart and animals sat there for 2 days before eventually being taken by a livery stable. And while a town journal did make mention of the cart and animals being abandoned, there wasn't really any kind of like essentially like PSA or anything put out about it. I have to wonder how common this was at the time. Yeah. I don't know for certain, but what I do know about the Old West from reenacting and researching about it, it does make a certain amount of sense. Like if people were trying to get west, it's like, we literally don't have room to take this. We can't take care of these animals anymore. We're just going to leave it and someone eventually will pick them up. Which again, you took what you could back then. Not say like people were thieves, but if something was presumably abandoned and then no one else was going to want to use it, they would take it. At least that's what would make sense to me. A $2,000 reward was issued for the capture of the Benders by the governor, and that's a big amount.
What would that be today?
Roughly $54,000.
It's not bad.
So yeah. Alas, this was to no avail. The Benders disappeared, and to this day, we don't really know what became of them.
Is there a reward still out?
I doubt it at this point.
Let's
Can you imagine?
Let's go back to Kansas.
Hell yeah.
And find them.
Yes.
You can go to the Sally House with me this time.
Yeah.
Judy wasn't impressed.
I'll go. I'm not going at night. I don't want to investigate.
I didn't go at night.
You didn't. While rumors spread that vigilantes had found and quote unquote taken care of the Bender family, nothing definitive was ever brought forward to prove that. And for all we know, it is entirely possible that the family escaped justice. And I assume they would have stopped after that. Because, I mean, no, as far as I'm aware, no crimes with the same type of like MO, that kind of thing, were ever reported on, because I feel like they would have connected those dots.
Maybe. Someone by now would have.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that like have studied the crap out of this case at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I do have a little bit of a modern day follow-up to this case. Unfortunately, not any evidence of where the family is or was. But I did find an article from the I believe it's the Kansas University Alumni Magazine. This article was from 2024, and it discussed, this is so cool, it discussed a class who had been given permission to perform an archaeological dig on the Bender Homestead site.
That's cool.
Yeah. A direct quote from the article was, "We hope to find where everything was situated on the property, where the Bender house was, where the barn was, and maybe where some of the graves were," says Lauren Norman, assistant professor of anthropology, who over the summer led a 2-week field school for archaeology students on the Bender property.
Is anything there now?
No.
Okay.
So at this point, the original buildings and garden on the property is all gone.
Okay.
Apparently, people were looking for dark souvenirs from the crime, and they kind of picked it apart.
Well, like sometimes, people will not really care what's there and will build like a Chipotle or something on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's how you get haunted. That's how you get haunted Chipotles.
That's exactly how you get haunted Chipotles. I get the feeling that not much was done with the land afterwards. I mean, people kind of picked it apart, but the buildings were torn down, and then because of everything that happened there, it just kind of sat empty. It might have been farmed at one point. So the person that owns the property now is one Bob Miller. He bought the Bender home in 2020. What a year. Yeah. And he was interested in the story of the Benders. He was fascinated by the story, and he had as far as I can understand, he kind of spearheaded this project. He had reached out to a couple different organizations, different universities, and landed on Kansas University and extended the invitation for them to perform this dig on the site. It began in 2023, and as of when the article was written, they had so far found 1,200 artifacts.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I didn't find a follow-up to that. I wish I could have found one. And again, the article was written in 2024, so it's still a relatively modern article, but
they could still, whatever follow-up, if there's any papers or findings, that could still be kind of under construction almost. Like,
yeah,
they could
absolutely.
still be working on it.
160 acres is no small chunk of land. That's a big chunk to search through.
Are there any memorials to the victims or anything?
There is, I believe, in Cherryvale, there is a plaque or by the parcel of land. I can't remember exactly where it's located, but there is a plaque stating essentially this was where the Benders did their dirty deeds. And I would like to visit it at some point because I'm weird, but I also want to visit. I almost said Chipotle, Chowchilla.
If you really want to visit Chipotle, we can make that happen.
I want to visit Chipotle in Chowchilla.
I have a gift card.
Do you? Mm-hmm. I don't actually, fun fact, I don't actually eat at Chipotle too much because sometimes it upsets my stomach.
I like Chipotle.
I like their food. It tastes good, but.
I wonder how close this is to where I was.
Let's look it up.
I was almost in Missouri. I was that close to.
Okay. I meant to look up where it was on Google Maps and I completely forgot. Cherryvale. Ew, my throat just made a weird noise.
There's Cherryvale.
Okay.
I was really close to Kansas City.
So it's I don't know. I don't want to say it's close to Wichita, but it's
close to Oklahoma.
Yeah, close to the Oklahoma border.
Where the wind goes sweeping through the plains. We were an hour from Lawrence, which is where Supernatural.
Yes. Where the Winchesters.
Yeah. I didn't make Judy go on an hour drive with me. I was tempted AF. I was like,
if we go, I'll go with you.
We need to play. Actually, no, we do not need to play that song because that's only when bad things happen.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Never mind.
Tune in for tragedy.
We won't speak that into existence. But that's what I have on the Bloody Benders. And I do have one more fact in here.
Yes.
I've heard them described in the past as the first American family of serial killers, not the first American serial killer, the first serial killer family. I did find reference to that in an article, in the title of an article that I used, and that's also referenced. Mm-hmm. But I didn't find much mention of that in the articles themselves, so I didn't want to lead with that. Putting it out there.
We actually know our creepy person at Hawk Mountain was potentially the first American serial killer.
Potentially. Wasn't it H.H. Holmes?
When was the Chicago World Fair?
Yes, H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer.
What year was that?
This was 19th century, so 1800s.
There has to be someone before that.
I wonder if it was the first time someone was connected as a serial killer, if that makes sense.
The first one that was caught.
1861, Herman Webster Mudgett.
Yes.
Fine, when he was active.
When was the Axeman?
Axeman
early
was
1900s.
1900s, yep, 1920s.
That was a fun adventure we just went on.
Serial killers.
Okay, can I tell you the modern day thing?
Yes.
This is not related to serial killing as far as I know. These people were already dead. Did you hear about the person in Pennsylvania that was arrested because for grave robbing?
Okay, so I was listening to Morbid and they said something about that.
Yeah, I was perusing the interwebs when I was down. I visited my parents in Delaware.
Yeah.
And I was perusing the interwebs and I came across this. Between his basement and a storage unit, they found over 100 sets of human remains.
Ew.
He was going to some of the different cemeteries in Delaware County and I think near Philly. And he was in cahoots with, if I'm understanding this correctly, he was in cahoots with this other guy who was selling the remains on the dark web.
What the heck?
What do you think people use bodies for on the dark web?
Oh, I don't even know.
He has a bunch of charges
Good.
grave robbing.
Defiling a corpse.
Yeah.
Defiling multiple corpses. What a jackass. Maybe I shouldn't say that too loud. We're going to get sued.
But isn't that wild?
That's insane.
And there's in his basement.
Oh, I don't understand. Why would you do that?
For money.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Like, they were digging them up and he was getting, like, I mean, they sell all kinds of wild things on the dark web.
Yeah. Well,
I'd imagine they probably make bank off of that.
yeah. Because, I imagine, like, there's people that buy it for kicks, and then there's probably people that buy it for nefarious reasons, shall we say, buy body parts. Wow. That's really upsetting.
People are something.
And listen, you don't have the excuse, because like you could get into a whole ethical debate in the 1800s when they were learning about medicine and whatnot, of people selling bodies, fresh bodies, to like doctors and whatnot. You don't get that in today's day and age.
Yeah, because like they were, they could only use the remains of people that were like criminals.
Yep.
And so there weren't enough cadavers for the surgical and medical students to learn their craft on.
Right.
But yeah, that was just like freaking wild.
Ugh.
He's our age. I think our kid's like 32.
We don't claim you.
I'm older than him.
You're gross. Again, I
Because
say
I'm old?
maybe no, not you. That guy. Again, I say maybe you need to not say that so loud, because I don't want to get sued.
But it was the trap door with the blood is what made me think of.
Oh, okay, sure.
I don't know why that, like, but anyways,
I just can't. Oh gosh,
that was a fun turn. Usually your episodes make us sad, but I decided to make us sad in a different way. Some of my episodes have made us sad recently.
So yeah, Hawk Mountain just made me fascinated.
That was just a roller coaster ride.
Yes.
Did I have a sad one recently? I don't think so.
Why am I dark? Wow.
But you tend to do more true crime. I tend to do stuff that's not real.
That's fair. I did Timmy D. Timmy D didn't make us sad. Well, it kind of made us sad in like he was abusing his wife. Like,
Caribbean cats.
His Caribbean cats.
Caribbean kitty cats. Are you ready for the questions?
I'm ready.
What drew you to this topic?
So we touched on, I mentioned this case in Hawk Mountain, and because some of the things in Hawk Mountain or in your Hawk Mountain episode reminded me of the Benders. And the Benders aren't one that I think of that often when I think of true crime, but I had initially heard of this case via the Morbid episode, the Morbid podcast. Everyone take a drink of water. Of water, friends.
Water.
Let us hydrate. And as well from the podcast, I don't know if I've talked about this podcast before, but it's excellent. It's called Legends of the Old West.
That sounds cool.
It's really good. If you're interested in the Old West, the Wild West, it's a historical podcast. He covers anything. He did an episode on the Benders. He did an episode on the Donner Party, which, but he's also done episodes on like different major figures in the West. So like Wild Bill Hitchcock, trying to think
Annie
now.
Oakley?
Annie Oakley. Yeah, I think I don't know for certain if he's done Annie Oakley, but I'm sure she's probably at least mentioned. But very, very good. Highly recommend the podcast. So Chris and I had actually listened to his coverage on the Benders. I thought it'd be interesting to do my own research into it and kind of relearn the case, because I couldn't remember a lot about it. I knew it was a family, and I knew it was in the Old West. But
was there anything you wished you could have researched more into?
I'd be interested in learning more about what the archaeological dig in Kansas is turning up or has turned up. And I'm also interested in visiting the site and the historical marker. And I don't know if that counts as further research. I feel like it does.
I think so. What did you find the most strange about this topic?
The background of the family. Well, you know what? That actually could tie into the other question too. Like I really wish I knew more about their background, because it's just weird. But I don't know that that's something, unfortunately, because of if they were immigrants, documentation in that day, I can imagine, was not fantastic. So, but does that wrap us up? I do believe.
That does. That wraps up our dive into the Bloody Benders.
Hope you enjoyed.
Question mark. All right. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a suggestion for a strange or mysterious topic, a comment about an episode, or just want to chat, please reach out.
You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube. Comment directly on episodes on Spotify and YouTube, or leave a review of the podcast as a whole on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Find us on Instagram at something_strange_pod, on Facebook at Something Strange Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at something_strange pod, and check out our strange content over at TikTok at somethingstrangepod01.
You can also send us a Gmail at somethingstrangepod24@gmail.com, and the 24 is numeric. Well, strangers, it's time for us to part ways.
Until we meet again, don't go looking for a meal and rest at a strange roadside inn. Don't worry, I won't.
We'll be back again soon with another
Something Strange. When we get up there. Da, 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 da.
And we're back to Has Been Hotel. Blake Roman, come on the podcast, please.
Have you ever seen a shadow linger in the corner of your eye, seen a flashing light dart across the sky? Have you ever wished upon a candle to make your wish come true? I'm sure you've told a haunted tale or two. Are you interested in learning the pagan ways, witchcraft, grimoires, candles await? Have you ever seen the living dead and stood still instead of fled? Cryptics are fun, but the universe has our eye. The stars align, shows us our signs, and we're here to discuss the divine. Welcome to Moon Brews, a supernatural podcast, hosted by yours truly, Haley.